Katie. I'm back. It's been about 4 months since I read this book out loud. All I can say is I ended up getting COVID, and then winter was just very wintry. So here I am in our first huge heat wave in Portland. It's been in the 90s all week, and I think today is going to be really muggy, and we're going to have thunderstorms, so that should be fun. But since it's so warm, I woke up early and thought, what better time to start reading this book again? And I think part of why I stopped too was I've heard some more criticism of this book and this work around nonviolent communication specifically that gave me pause and wanted just some more space to explore what was going on there. I'm still learning about I don't know how to say it. There's, like, everything is human-made, right? There's no perfect solution or perfect method that solves all the problems. I think aspects of this can be super helpful, and I think it's good to check in with people and see how it's landing too, because you don't want to use a tool as a form of power over somebody else in any way. I don't want to, at least. So if this feels helpful to you, great. If it doesn't feel helpful, great, that's valid. The last video, I think I was also having some video issues. So my iPad, which I record these on, kept shutting down. So I just thought, with all these factors together, I think it's time to take a pause. And since the videos I recorded got kind of spliced up, I'm going to go back to where we were last time, and I'll just start from there and we'll see what happens. So I hope that you are well wherever you are and enjoying your weather, whatever it is. And we'll dive back in with Nonviolent Communication, Marshall B. Rosenberg, Chapter 5, Taking Responsibility for Our Feelings. Always a good thing to practice, because we have a lot of feelings, right? Also, I keep looking at myself, but I realize the camera's on one side, so apologies or not, whatever. It just is what it is. Taking responsibility for our feelings. People are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. Epictetus. I feel like all the names and things he references are common enough that I should know how to say them, and yet they always feel so challenging. So here we go. Hearing a negative message. 4 options. The third component of NVC entails the acknowledgement of the root of our feelings. NVC, nonviolent communication, heightens our awareness that what others say and do may be the stimulus, but never the cause of our feelings. We see that our feelings result from how we choose to receive what others say and do, as well as from our particular needs and expectations in that moment. With this third component, we are led to accept responsibility for what we do to generate our own feelings. When someone gives us a negative message, whether verbally or non-verbally, we have 4 options as to how to receive it. One option is to take it personally by hearing blaming criticism. For example, someone is angry and says, "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met." If choosing to take it personally, we might react, "Oh, I should have been more sensitive." We accept the other person's judgment and blame ourselves. We choose this option at great cost to our self-esteem, for it inclines us towards feelings of guilt, shame, and depression. A second option is to fault the speaker. For example, in response to, "You're the most self-centered person I've ever met," we might protest, "You have no right to say that. I'm always considering your needs. You're the one who is really self-centered." When we receive messages this way and blame the speaker, we are likely to feel anger. When receiving negative messages, our third option would be to shine the light of consciousness on our own feelings and needs. Thus, we might reply, "When I hear you say that I am the most self-centered person you've ever met, I feel hurt because I need some recognition for my efforts to be considerate of your preferences." By focusing attention on our own feelings and needs, we become conscious that our current feelings of hurt derives from a need for our efforts to be recognized. Finally, a fourth option on receiving a negative message is to shine the light of consciousness on the other person's feelings and needs as they are currently expressed. We might, for example, say, "Are you feeling hurt because you need more consideration for your preferences?" We accept responsibility for our feelings rather than blame other people by acknowledging our own needs, desires, expectations, values, or thoughts. Note the difference between the following expressions of disappointment. Example 1. A. You disappointed me by not coming over last evening. B. I was disappointed when you didn't come over because I wanted to talk over some things that were bothering me. Speaker A contributes responsibility for his disappointment solely to another person's action. Speaker B traces his feeling of disappointment to his own unfulfilled desire. Example 2. A. Their canceling the contract really irritated me. B. When they canceled the contract, I felt really irritated because I was thinking to myself that it was an awfully irresponsible thing to do. Speaker A attributes her irritation solely to the behavior of the other party, whereas Speaker B accepts responsibility for her feeling by acknowledging the thought behind it. She recognizes that her blaming way of thinking has generated her irritation. In MVC, however, we would urge the speaker to go a step further by identifying what she is needing, what she's wanting. What need, desire, expectation, hope, or value of hers has not been fulfilled? As we shall see, the more we are able to connect our feelings to our own needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. To relate her feelings to what she is wanting, Speaker B might have said, "When they canceled the contract, I felt really irritated because I was hoping for an opportunity to rehire the workers we laid off last year." It is helpful to recognize a number of common speech patterns that tend to mask accountability for our own feelings. 1. Use of impersonal pronouns such as it and that. It really infuriates me when spelling mistakes appear in our public brochures. That bugs me a lot. 2. The use of the expression I feel an emotion because, followed by a person or personal pronoun rather than I. I feel hurt because you said you don't love me. I feel angry because the supervisor broke her promise. 3. Statements that mention only the actions of others. When you don't call me on my birthday, I feel hurt. Mommy is disappointed when you don't finish your food. In each of these instances, we can deepen our awareness of our own responsibility by substituting the phrase I feel because I. For example, 1. I feel really infuriated when spelling mistakes like that appear in our public brochures because I want our company to project a professional image. 2. I feel angry that the supervisor broke her promise because I was counting on getting that long weekend to visit my brother. 3. Mommy feels disappointed when you don't finish your food because I want you to grow up strong and healthy. I don't know why I don't like that one. The basic mechanism of motivating by guilt is to attribute the responsibility for one's own feelings to another. When parents say, "It hurts mommy and daddy when you get poor grades in school," they are implying that the child's actions are the cause of the parent's happiness or unhappiness. On the surface, taking responsibility for the feelings of others can easily be mistaken for positive caring. It may appear that the child cares for the parent and feels bad because the parent is suffering. However, if children who assume this kind of responsibility change their behavior in accordance with parental wishes, they are not acting from the heart, but acting to avoid guilt. The needs at the roots of feelings. Judgments, criticisms, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our needs. If someone says, "You never understand me," they are really telling us that their need to be understood is not being fulfilled. If a wife says, "You've been working late every night this week. You love your work more than you love me," she is saying that her need for intimacy is not being met. When we express our needs indirectly through the use of evaluations, interpretations, and images, others are likely to hear criticism, and when people hear anything that sounds like criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. If we wish for a compassionate response from others, it is self-defeating to express our needs by interpreting or diagnosing their behavior. Instead, the more directly we can connect our feelings to our needs, the easier it is for others to respond to us compassionately. Unfortunately, most of us have never been taught to think in terms of needs. We are accustomed to thinking about what's wrong with other people when our needs aren't being fulfilled. Thus, if we want coats to be hung up in the closet, we may characterize our children as lazy for leaving them on the couch, or we may interpret our coworkers as irresponsible when they don't go about their tasks the way we would prefer them to. I was once invited to Southern California to mediate between some landowners and migrant farm workers whose conflict had grown increasingly hostile and violent. I began the meeting by asking these two questions. What is it that you are each needing? And what would you like to request of the other in relation to these needs? The problem is that these people are racist, shouted a farm worker. The problem is that these people don't respect law and order, shouted a landowner even more loudly. As is often the case, these groups were more skilled in analyzing the perceived wrongness of others than in clearly expressing their own needs. In a comparable situation, I once met with a group of Israelis and Palestinians who wanted to establish the mutual trust necessary to bring peace to their homelands. I opened the session with the same questions. What is it you are needing, and what would you like to request from one another in relation to those needs? Instead of directly stating his needs, a Palestinian Mukhtar, who is like a village mayor, answered, "You people are acting like a bunch of Nazis." A statement like that is not likely to get the cooperation of a group of Israelis. Almost immediately, an Israeli woman jumped up and countered, "Mukhtar, that was a totally insensitive thing for you to say." Here were people who had come together to build trust and harmony, but after only one interchange, matters were worse than before they began. This happens often when people are used to analyzing and blaming one another rather than clearly expressing what they need. In this case, the woman could have responded to the Mukhtar in terms of her own needs and requests by saying, for example, "I'm needing more respect in our dialogue. Instead of telling us how you think we're acting, would you tell us what it is we are doing that you find disturbing?" It has been my experience over and over again that from the moment people will begin talking about what they need rather than what's wrong with one another, the possibility of finding ways to meet everybody's need is greatly increased. The following are some of the basic human needs we all share. Autonomy, to choose one's dreams, goals, values, to choose one's plan for fulfilling one's dreams, goals, and values. Celebration, to celebrate the creation of life and dreams fulfilled, to celebrate losses, loved ones, dreams, etc., mourning. Integrity, authenticity, creativity, meaning, self-worth. Interdependence, acceptance, appreciation, closeness, community, consideration, contribution to the enrichment of life, to exercise one's power by giving that which contributes to life. Interdependence continued. Emotional safety, empathy, honesty, the empowering honesty that enables us to learn from our limitations, love, reassurance, respect, support, trust, understanding, worth. Play, fun, laughter. Spiritual communion, beauty, harmony, inspiration, order, peace. Physical nurturance, air, food, movement, exercise, protection from life-threatening forms of life, viruses, bacteria, insects, predatory animals. Rest, sexual expression, shelter, touch, water. The pain of expressing our needs versus the pain of not expressing our needs. In a world where we're often judged harshly for identifying and revealing our needs, doing so can be very frightening. Women in particular are susceptible to criticism. For centuries, the image of the loving woman has been associated with sacrifice and the denial of one's own needs to take care of others. Because women are socialized to view the caretaking of others as their highest duty, they often learn to ignore their own needs. At one workshop, we discussed what happens to women who internalize such beliefs. These women, if they ask for what they want, will often do so in a way that both reflects and reinforces the beliefs that they have no genuine right to their needs and that their needs are unimportant. For example, because she is fearful of asking for what she needs, a woman may fail to simply say that she's had a busy day, is feeling tired, and wants some time in the evening to herself. Instead, her words come out sounding like a legal case. You know, I haven't had a moment to myself all day. I ironed all the shirts, did the whole week's laundry, took the dog to the vet, made dinner, packed the lunches, and called all the neighbors about the block meeting. So, imploringly, so how about if you... No, comes the quick response. Her plaintive request elicits resistance rather than compassion from her listeners. They have difficulty hearing and valuing the need behind her pleas, and furthermore react negatively to her weak attempt to argue from a position of what she should get or deserves to get from them. In the end, the speaker is again persuaded that her needs don't matter, not realizing that they were expressed in a way unlikely to draw a positive response. My mother was once at a workshop where other women were discussing how frightening it is to be expressing their needs. Suddenly she got up and left the room, and didn't return for a long time. She finally reappeared, looking very pale. In the presence of the group, I asked, "Mother, are you all right?" "Yes," she answered. But I just had a sudden realization that's very hard for me to take in. What's that? I've just become aware that for 36 years I was angry with your father for not meeting my needs, and now I realize I never once clearly told him what I needed. My mother's revelation was accurate. Not one time that I can remember did she clearly express her needs to my father. She'd hint around and go through all kinds of convolutions, but never would she ask directly for what she needed. We tried to understand why it was so hard for her to have done so. My mother grew up in an economically impoverished family. She recalled asking for things as a child and being admonished by her brothers and sisters. "You shouldn't ask for that. You know we're poor. Do you think you're the only person in the family?" Eventually, she grew to fear that asking for what she needed would only lead to disapproval and judgment. She related a childhood anecdote about one of her sisters who had had an appendix operation and afterwards had been given a beautiful little purse by another sister. My mother was 14 at the time. Oh, how she yearned to have an exquisitely beaded purse like her sister's, but she dared not open her mouth. So guess what? She feigned a pain in her side and went the whole way with her story. Her family took her to several doctors. They were unable to produce a diagnosis and so opted for exploratory surgery. It had been a bold gamble on my mother's part, but it worked. She was given an identical purse. When she received the coveted purse, my mother was elated despite being in physical agony from the surgery. 2 nurses came in and stuck a thermometer in her mouth. My mother said, to show the purse to the second nurse, who answered, "Oh, for me? Why, thank you," and took the purse. My mother was at a loss and never figured out how to say, "I didn't mean to give it to you, please return it to me." Her story poignantly reveals how painful it can be when people don't openly acknowledge their needs. From emotional slavery to emotional liberation. In our development toward a state of emotional liberation, most of us experience 3 stages in the way we relate to others. Stage 1. In this stage, which I refer to as emotional slavery, we believe ourselves responsible for the feelings of others. We think we must constantly strive to keep everyone happy. If they don't appear happy, we feel responsible and compelled to do something about it. This can easily lead us to see the very people who are closest to us as burdens. Taking responsibility for the feelings of others can be very detrimental to intimate relationships. I routinely hear variations of the following theme. "I'm really scared to be in a relationship. Every time I see my partner in pain or needing something, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm in prison, that I'm being smothered, and I just have to get out of the relationship as fast as possible." This response is common among those who experience love as denial of one's own needs in order to attend to the needs of the beloved. In the early days of a relationship, partners typically relate joyfully and compassionately to each other out of a sense of freedom. The relationship is exhilarating, spontaneous, wonderful. Eventually, however, as the relationship becomes serious, partners may begin to assume responsibility for each other's feelings. If I were a partner who is conscious of doing this, I might acknowledge the situation by explaining, I can't bear it when I lose myself in relationships. When I see my partner's pain, I lose me, and then I just have to break free. However, if I have not reached this level of awareness, I am likely to blame my partner for the deterioration of the relationship. Thus, I might say, my partner is so needy and dependent, it's really stressing out our relationship. In such a case, my partner would do well to reject the notion that there is anything wrong with her needs. It would only make a bad situation worse to accept that blame. Instead, she could offer an empathic response to the pain of my emotional slavery. So you find yourself in panic. It's very hard for you to hold on to the deep caring and love we've had without turning it into a responsibility, duty, or obligation. You sense your freedom closing down because you think you constantly have to take care of me. If, however, instead of an empathic response, she says, are you feeling tense because I've been making too many demands on you? Then both of us are likely to stay enmeshed in emotional slavery, making it that much more difficult for the relationship to survive. Stage 2. In this stage, we become aware of the high cost of assuming responsibility for others' feelings and trying to accommodate them at our own expense. When we notice how much of our lives we've missed and how little we have responded to the call of our own soul, we may get angry. I refer jokingly to this stage as the obnoxious stage because we tend towards obnoxious comments like, that's your problem, I'm not responsible for your feelings, when presented with another person's pain. We are clear what we are not responsible for, but have yet to learn how to be responsible to others in a way that is not emotionally enslaving. As we emerge from the stage of emotional slavery, we may continue to carry remnants of fear and guilt around from having our own needs. Thus, it is not surprising that we end up expressing our needs in ways that sound rigid and unyielding to the ears of others. For example, during a break in one of my workshops, a young woman expressed appreciation for the insight she gained in her own state of emotional enslavement. When the workshop resumed, I suggested an activity to the group. The same young woman then declared assertively, I'd rather do something else. I sensed she was exercising her newfound right to express her needs, even if they ran counter to those of others. To encourage her to sort out what she wanted, I asked, do you want to do something else even if it conflicts with my needs? She thought for a moment and then stammered, yes, no. Her confusion reflects how, in the obnoxious stage, we have yet to grasp that emotional liberation entails more than simply asserting our own needs. I recall an incident during my daughter Marla's passage towards emotional liberation. She had always been the perfect little girl who denied her own needs to comply with the wishes of others. When I became aware of how frequently she suppressed her own desires in order to please others, I talked to her about how I'd enjoy hearing her express her needs more often. When we first broached the subject, Marla cried, but Daddy, I don't want to disappoint anybody. She protested helplessly. I tried to show Marla how her honesty would be a gift more precious to others than accommodating them to prevent their upset. I also clarified ways she could empathize with people when they were upset without taking responsibility for their feelings. A short time later, I saw evidence that my daughter was beginning to express her needs more openly. A call came from her school principal, apparently disturbed by a communication he'd had with Marla, who had arrived at school wearing overalls. Marla, he'd said, young women do not dress this way, to which Marla had responded, bug off. Hearing this was cause for celebration. Marla had graduated from emotional slavery to obnoxiousness. She was learning to express her needs and risk dealing with the displeasure of others. Surely she had yet to assert her needs comfortably and in a way that respected the needs of others, but I trusted this would occur in time. Stage 3. At third stage, emotional liberation, we respond to the needs of others out of compassion, never out of fear, guilt, or shame. Our actions are therefore fulfilling to us as well as to those who receive our efforts. We accept full responsibility for our own intentions and actions, but not for the feelings of others. At this stage, we are aware that we can never meet our own needs at the expense of others. Emotional liberation involves stating clearly what we need in a way that communicates we are equally concerned with that the needs of others be fulfilled. NVC is designed to support us in relating at this level. Summary. The third component of NVC is the acknowledgement of the needs behind our feelings. What others say and do may be the stimulus for, but never the cause of, our feelings. When someone communicates negatively, we have 4 options as to how to receive the message. 1. Blame ourselves. 2. Blame others. 3. Censor our own feelings and needs. 4. Sense the feelings and needs hidden in the other person's negative message. Judgments, criticisms, diagnoses, and interpretations of others are all alienated expressions of our own needs and values. When others hear criticism, they tend to invest their energy in self-defense or counterattack. The more directly we can connect our feelings to our needs, the easier it is for others to respond compassionately. In a world where we are often harshly judged for identifying and revealing our needs, doing so can be very frightening, especially for women who are socialized to ignore their own needs while caring for others. In the course of developing emotional responsibility, most of us experience 3 stages. 1. Emotional slavery, believing ourselves responsible for the feelings of others. 2. The obnoxious stage, in which we refuse to admit to caring what anyone else feels or needs. And 3. Emotional liberation, in which we accept full responsibility for our own feelings, but not the feelings of others, while being aware that we can never meet our own needs at the expense of others. NVC in action. Bring back the stigma of illegitimacy. A student of nonviolent communication volunteering at a food bank was shocked when an elderly coworker burst out from behind a newspaper. What we need to do in this country is bring back the stigma of illegitimacy. The student's habitual reaction to this kind of statement would have been to say nothing, to judge the other severely but silently, and eventually to process her own feelings safely away from the scene. This time, she remembered she had the option of listening for the feelings and needs behind the words that had shocked her. Student. First checking out her guess as to what the coworker was observing. Are you reading something about teenage pregnancies in the paper? Coworker. Yes, it's unbelievable how many of them are doing it. Student. Now listening for the coworker's feelings and what unmet need might be giving rise to this feeling. Are you feeling alarmed because you'd like kids to have stable families? Coworker. Of course. Do you know my father would have killed me if I'd done anything like that? Student. So you're remembering how it was for girls in your generation who got pregnant. Coworker. Sure thing. We knew what would happen to us if we got pregnant. We were scared about it all the time, not like these girls nowadays. Student. Are you annoyed that there is no fear of punishment for the girls who get pregnant these days? Coworker. Well, at least fear and punishment worked. It says here that there are girls sleeping around with different men just so they can get pregnant. That's right, they have babies and the rest of us in society pay for it. The student of NVC heard 2 different feelings in this statement. 1. Astonishment that girls would deliberately get pregnant, and 2. Annoyance that taxpayers end up paying for children born in this way. She chose which feeling to empathize with. Student. Are you astonished to realize that people are getting pregnant these days without any consideration for reputation, consequences, financial stability, all the things that you used to consider? Coworker. Yeah, and guess who ends up paying for it? The coworker, probably feeling heard around her astonishment, moved on to her other feeling, that of annoyance. As often happens when there is a mixture of feelings present, the speaker will return to those that have not received empathic attention. It is not necessary for the listener to reflect back a complex mixture of feelings all at once. The flow of compassion will continue as each feeling comes up again in its turn. Student. Sounds like you're exasperated because you'd like your tax money to be used for other purposes. Is that so? Coworker. Certainly is. Do you know that my son and his wife want a second child and they can't have one even though they have 2 jobs because it costs so much? Student. I guess you're sad about that? You'd probably love to have a second grandchild. Coworker. Yes, and it's not just for me that it would make a difference. Student. And your son to have a family he wants. Even though the student guessed only partially correct, she did not interrupt the flow of empathy, instead allowing the coworker to continue and realize another concern. Coworker. Yes, I think it's sad to be a single child too. Student, oh, I see. You'd like for Katie to have a little brother. Coworker, that would be nice. At this point, the student sensed a release in her coworker. A moment of silence elapsed. She felt surprised to discover that, while she still wanted to express her own views, her urgency and tension had dissipated because she no longer felt adversarial. She understood the feelings and needs behind her coworker's statements and no longer felt that the two of them were worlds apart. Student, expressing herself in MVC and using all 4 parts of the process: observation, O; feeling, F; need, N; request, R. You know, when you first said that we should bring back the stigma of illegitimacy, see observation, I got really scared, feeling, because it really matters to me that all of us here share a deep caring for people needing help. That's the need. Some of the people coming here for food are teenage parents, observation, and I want to make sure they feel welcome, need. Would you mind telling me how you feel when you see Deshal or Amy and her boyfriend walking in? Request. The dialogue continued with several more exchanges until the woman got the reassurance she needed that her coworker did indeed offer caring and respectful help to unmarried teen clients. Even more importantly, what the woman gained was a new experience in expressing disagreement in a way that met her needs for honesty and mutual respect. In the meantime, the coworker left satisfied and her concerns about teen pregnancy had been fully heard. Both parties felt understood and their relationship benefited from having shared their understanding and differences without hostility. In the absence of NVC, their relationship might have begun to deteriorate from this moment, and the work they both wanted to do in common, helping people, might have suffered. Exercise 3, acknowledging needs. To practice identifying needs, please circle the number in front of each statement where the speaker is acknowledging responsibility for his or her feelings. 1. You irritate me when you leave company documents on the conference room floor. 2. I feel angry when you say that because I'm wanting respect and I hear your words as an insult. 3. I feel frustrated when you come late. 4. I'm sad that you won't be coming for dinner because I was hoping we could spend the evening together. 5. I feel disappointed because you said you would do it and you didn't. 6. I'm discouraged because I would have liked to have progressed further in my work right now. 7. Little things people say sometimes hurt me. 8. I feel happy that you received that award. 9. I feel scared when you raise your voice. 10. I'm grateful that you offered me a ride because I was needing to get home before my children arrive. Here are my responses for exercise 3. If you circled this number, we're not in agreement. To me, the statement implies that the other person's behavior is solely responsible for the speaker's feelings. It doesn't reveal the needs or thoughts that are contributing to the speaker's feelings. To do so, the speaker might have said, I'm irritated when you leave company documents on the conference room floor because I want our documents to be safely stored and accessible. 2. If you circle this number, we're in agreement. 3. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To express the needs or thoughts underlying his or her feelings, the speaker might have said, I feel frustrated when you come late because I was hoping we'd be able to get some front row seats. 4. If you circle this number, we're in agreement. 5. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying his or her feelings, the speaker might have said, when you said you'd do it and then didn't, I felt disappointed because I want to be able to rely upon your words. 6. If you circle this number, we're in agreement. 7. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying his or her feelings, the speaker might have said, sometimes when people say little things, I feel hurt because I want to be appreciated, not criticized. 8. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying his or her feelings, the speaker might have said, when you received that award, I felt happy because I was hoping you'd be recognized for all the work you put into the project. 9. If you circle this number, we're not in agreement. To express the needs and thoughts underlying his or her feelings, the speaker might have said, when you raise your voice, I feel scared because I'm telling myself someone might get hurt here and I need to know that we're all safe. 10. If you circle this number, we're in agreement. Whew. Okay, that is chapter 5 of Nonviolent Communication. I hope you enjoyed listening to that and maybe learned some things or understand yourself a little better, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.